Hey, what's up? So 11-Bit Studios has pushed out a fresh patch for Frostpunk 2, version 1.5.4. What feels smart about this update is how it targets a mix of mechanical edge cases and some of those weird late-game glitches that could derail long campaigns. Things like stacking and interaction bugs for abilities, fixes so certain policies can't be researched without the right building, and tweaks to how hubs and districts apply their area effects. All the small technical bits that quietly make your playthrough less frustrating. One of the fixes that'll matter to strategy players is the Survivalist's headquarters territory exploration threat decrease now stacking properly, and the optimize inputs ability finally not reducing automaton factory output anymore. Stuff that changes how you plan your builds and efficiencies across the map. There's also a correction so you can't research certain policies like criminal reparation or treatment without a build council, which prevents some odd meta exploits where the tech tree would open up before the city had the proper institutions. The air transport hub's effects were also adjusted to properly affect buildings inside districts, which cleans up inconsistencies when you're juggling adjacency and hub ranges. The fractured Utopias side of the patch gets a focus sweep. Community actions like study mementos now behave correctly and won't be used to progress a cornerstone when no other research is available. Mender's housing reindeer capacity scales with district efficiency, as intended. And policy text for emergency essentials was updated, so what you read in the UI matches the gameplay result. There were also fixes for duplicated negotiation options for Bohemians, and a few tail-specific issues. For example, certain abilities that should have been unavailable under particular conditions were gated properly, and district boundary tools now work on deactivated districts too. These are the sorts of fixes that smooth out the Utopia Builder experience and stop you from feeling punished by UI or narrative inconsistencies. The Plague Tale in particular got some careful attention, and this is probably one of the standouts of the update. The sudden huge spikes of plague-infected citizens that could prematurely end a tale have been addressed, and a new ability called Test Plague Therapies was introduced. This ability unlocks after you search the patient zero location and can be used in districts housing a research institute. It converts a limited number of contaminated citizens into normal civ citizens, though some will die in the process, and each use accelerates vaccine research. It's a risky but strategic tool to manage outbreaks and buy time for vaccine production. Importantly, this ability doesn't retroactively affect old saves, so it's only relevant going forward for new or continuing tales. Alongside that, pharmaceutical labs now produce more vaccines, plague research costs fewer heat stamps, and contaminated vaccinated modifiers will be properly cleared from communities once the tale finishes. There are also a handful of objective and UI fixes tied to the Plague Tale. Things like vaccinate population objectives updating correctly after deaths, and trust tooltips now showing vaccine-related trust boosts, which helps when you're trying to track progress during tense tale moments. And on the Doomsayer's tale side, citizens who leave the city due to story events are no longer counted as deaths, which keeps your metrics honest and prevents accidental achievement or failure triggers. Achievements and progression got some TLC too. A couple of achievements that previously reset progress under odd circumstances were patched so that, for instance, disabling a worn-out district mid-run no longer wipes a long stretch of required weeks, and other safety checks were added so only the intended death types count toward tale-specific achievement criteria. All of these small corrections avoid that I did the right thing but the game didn't feeling, and that's a surprisingly big quality boost for completionists and longtime players. On the interface and performance side, the patch includes major memory and object count optimizations for widgets, a new option to rebind the pause key, better visibility for affinity emblems and construction radials, improved Utopia tree visuals at lower resolutions, and fixes for controller camera and menu oddities. Production districts no longer reset output mode when expanded, and a few HUD and resource display bugs, especially ones that popped up when switching between cities after unlocking certain resources, were smoothed out. There are also under-the-hood fixes for threading-related crashes, and prologue save states created before the 1.5.x series that could crash. Memory optimizations across the board should make longer campaigns more stable. Visually, the team adjusted shadow counts and VFX to shave GPU and memory pressure, increased the outline size for insulated districts in the heat map overlay to make them easier to spot, and fixed UI artifacting that some RTX 50 series users reported. A few faction art and hub visuals were tidied up as well, like making sure Technocrats buildings don't lose cable connections when loading saves and converting some district panels to include relevant faction art. Audio got small improvements to district SFX, and localization received attention across several languages. All in all, this update feels like a pragmatic, gameplay-first patch. It doesn't add flashy new systems, but it irons out campaign-stopping bugs, tightens how DLC systems interact with the base game, and makes the late game less likely to surprise you with emergent failures. If you've been building long Utopia trees or tinkering with tails, the fixes to stacking, district interactions, and the plague mechanics should noticeably reduce weird edge case behavior. That's it. No extra pitches or asks, just the patch laid out so you know what shifted under the hood.